This week, while the world's attention was on President Trump's Iran breakthrough, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney flew to Armenia to meet with European and Commonwealth leaders. And while he was there, he went on record admitting that the rules-based international order is over.
The world is undergoing a rupture across several dimensions in technology, in energy, in commerce, and geopolitics. It's my strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt out of Europe.
Now, Carney is not trying to save the old system. He's announcing its successor, and the United States is not on the list. Because what you saw was not a diplomatic trip. It was a rival power center being put together in real time, a rules-based order 2.0, engineered to try and stop Donald Trump's America. Now, Carney isn't just the spokesman for this project. He's one of the architects. And what Carney did when he returned to Canada the day after that Armenia summit is going to tell you all you need to know about who that architecture serves. I'm Susan Kokinda. For decades, I've tracked how that rules-based order has been used to destroy the United States. And I can tell you what President Trump is doing, from the Straits of Hormuz to rebuilding America's economic independence, is the first real challenge to that empire in over 50 years. So if this is your kind of fight, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons so we can stay in touch and reach more patriots. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, what Carney said in Armenia and what the coalition he's building actually looks like. Second, the importance of the woman that Carney just installed as Canada's Governor General and her ties to George Soros and Jack Smith. And third, Trump's moves to rescue your grocery cart from decades of imperial control. So last week, we all saw King Charles in Washington trying to save the post-war order. This week, Mark Carney was in Armenia, admitting that the original version of that order is ruptured and needs to be retooled. Charles brought the pageantry. Carney is building the successor system. Now look at the countries that Carney identified who are supposed to comprise that successor system. Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia. That's the Anglosphere, plus the European imperial remnant. That is not a coalition of democracies. That's the British imperial system's remaining structure, consolidating against the American system of Donald Trump and what he's trying to revive. And the rest of the cast of characters in Armenia included the usual has-beens: Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Ursula von der Leyen. You get the picture. But when Carney returned from Armenia to Canada, he made an announcement in Ottawa. He appointed a new Governor General of Canada. Now, the media covers it as a routine administrative appointment. That's not what it was. Carney didn't just name the name of the new Governor General. He described the office itself.
The crown is a continuous thread through our constitutional life. It is, as His Majesty himself said, a symbol of Canada in all her richness and dynamism. And the Governor-General is the Crown's representative in Canada, Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces, steward of our traditions.
Now pay close attention to what Carney said. The Crown is not a symbol. It permeates Canada's constitutional life, and it wields the real power. Most people, including many Canadians, probably assume it's the Prime Minister who commands the military. He doesn't. The Crown's representative does. Remember that. Then he added this.
The Governor-General is the guardian of our constitutional order. The most demanding part of that role is rarely seen. It's the duty to ensure that government in Canada is formed, sustained, and, when the time comes, dismissed in accordance with law and convention.
Dismissed. The Governor-General can dismiss the government. That's how he chose to describe the ultimate power of the office he was about to fill. Because the people of Canada are not sovereign. The king is the sovereign. And I want you to remember that when you look at how Carney has been given the public portfolio to try and reshape the empire's rules-based order. Now, if you're beginning to get the idea of how the imperial system continues to operate, that it's really the real name for what a lot of you call globalization, then you need to subscribe to Promethean Action's free newsletter. We're going to show you how President Trump is taking on that imperial system and just how much of a threat he is to its controllers. The link is in the description, because you're going to get a bigger picture of what this fight looks like when I tell you just who it was that Mark Carney appointed as Governor General. Her name is Louise Harbour, and her appointment tells you everything about what rebuilding the rules-based order actually means in practice. Harbour built her career as chief prosecutor of the United Nations International Criminal Tribunals for both Yugoslavia and Rwanda. These were the first such tribunals since Nuremberg. And from that platform, she became one of the most prominent advocates for creating a permanent international criminal court. She delivered the opening statement at the launch of the NGO coalition for the ICC's global ratification, and she pushed governments to sign the statute. She described the ICC as the necessary evolution from the tribunals she ran, turning them into a permanent standing institution. So while she didn't work for the ICC, she built the political and legal movement that brought it into existence. She did it from the inside the same apparatus that George Soros was funding from the outside. Here's what Soros's Open Society said in a document they published on March 19th, 2018, about their relationship to the ICC. The Justice Initiative works closely with the International Criminal Court, helping it function as efficiently and effectively as possible, assisting local human rights advocates in gathering and presenting information of use to the ICC, pursuing advocacy and public education with governments to secure support for the ICC, and contributing to building the capacity of the ICC staff. So Harbour's career, the very same Harbour who's now the Governor General of Canada, helped build the legitimacy for the court that George Soros funded. And that apparatus then produced Jack Smith. Before he was appointed special counsel to prosecute Donald Trump, Jack Smith spent 2 years inside the ICC's Office of the Prosecutor in The Hague, the institution that Harbour championed and Soros funded. He then went to the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, and that was the direct successor to Harbour's Yugoslavia Tribunal. This is the same legal framework and the same mandate. Then Jack Smith brought it home, and he was handed a domestic target, Donald Trump. So Carney just made the architect of that entire project Canada's Governor General, the officer with the power to dismiss a government and command its military. This is not a coincidence. That's not a personnel decision. That is a signal delivered just as Carney is trying to rally what is left of the empire against Donald Trump's world of sovereign nations. Now, let's look at how those very same battle lines play out when it comes to the economic fight here at home. The Trump administration is taking on the imperial business model in a way that nobody has done for decades. On Monday, there was an extraordinary press conference between the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, and Peter Navarro, the White House Special Trade Counsel. And it was about beef. It was about why hamburger has basically become a luxury item for most of us. Secretary Rollins set the stage. She described why the administration is now taking unprecedented action against the big four meatpackers who control 85% of the market.
As of January 1st of this year, we have about 86.2 million head of cattle and calves in America. That is the lowest since the 1950s, and this year we're looking to be slightly down again. In the past decade alone, we've lost over 17% of our cattle ranchers. More than 100,000 ranches across this country are no more. However, and this is the second part of what I want to talk about today, the consolidation in U.S. meatpacking has led to just 4 meatpackers: JBS, a Brazilian-owned company, Cargill, Tyson Foods, and National Beef, another Brazilian company. Those four companies monopolize about 85% of the U.S. processing market today. On top of that, half of these meatpacking giants, including the largest meat packer in the world, are either foreign-owned or have significant foreign ownership and control, making them a threat not just to our cattle producers, but a threat to America itself. And as time has gone on, it becomes more and more clear that food security is truly national security.
So this administration is taking on the largest meat packers in the world, and half of them are foreign-owned. And Rollins, the Agriculture Secretary, described it with the acting Attorney General standing right next to her, describing how the administration is taking on a system of cartelization and market manipulation, which is one of the hallmarks of the imperial system. Then Rollins said something very significant. She identified how long this has been going on.
The rate of this four-firm control has accelerated since the 1970s. According to USDA data, concentration for cattle slaughter of these four was only 25% in 1977 and jumped to 71% by 1992. As mentioned today, it is an astounding 85%.
Now, those dates are very important. She points out this began in the 1970s, and that's not a coincidence. That was the turning point in the post-war system, when the Bretton Woods system of stable currencies and real economic expansion was ended. It was ended on August 15th, 1971, when the dollar was cut loose from the gold reserve standard. That was the point at which the financial system shifted from production to extraction. And it was in that same decade that the food supply started cartelizing. And by 1992, it was 71% controlled by these four companies. Now remember, this is the same process of cartelization and monopoly which took over world oil supplies during the same period. And it's a process which is now being dismantled by Donald Trump. In that press conference, Peter Navarro described just how much political power these meatpacking cartels have.
The Brazilians, particularly JBS, hands out millions of dollars to our American political system like it's candy. And the rate of return they get on that would make a Wall Street hedge fund blush.
Now, what Navarro is doing right here is identifying the role of one of the two big foreign-owned meatpacking companies, JBS, which is nominally Brazilian-owned. But let's look at it a little more carefully. JBS is the world's largest meatpacker, and yes, it is Brazilian-owned, but it's controlled through a holding company called J&F. And one of the chairs of J&F for many years was a Brazilian financier named Henrique Mariel. His career spans the following institutions: the Bank of Boston, Fleet Boston, Lazard America. He was the president of Brazil's central bank for a while, and he was a member of the governing council of Lloyd's of London, the same institution which controlled shipping insurance on the Strait of Hormuz until their monopoly was busted up by President Trump, and extracted what Peter Navarro called a terror premium due to the instability created by the Iranian regime for 47 years, pricing war risk on every barrel of oil moving through the Strait of Hormuz. So, from the standpoint of empire, controlling raw materials and commodities through cartelization and manipulation is part of their business model. And this is just one example, this JBS example, of how the same personnel cycle through both operations, because it's one system: oil and food, Hormuz and your grocery store, both priced and cycled through the City of London and their institutions, and the Trump administration is taking it on both fronts. So let's step back. Carney went to Armenia to try to rally the has-beens around a new Anglo-European rules-based order, while simultaneously installing as Canada's new Governor General the woman who built the legal precedent that Jack Smith used against Donald Trump. The empire is trying to consolidate because it's not going to go quietly, but it cannot reverse this. The Department of Justice and the Ag Department just named the meat packer cartel, and Donald Trump is dismantling 50 years of financial extraction through American agriculture, and the oil choke point is now being unblocked. So for the first time since the end of World War II, the United States is fighting back on every front. This is the year, the 250th anniversary of our independence, when that fight comes to a head. So if you want to be part of that, join us at Promethean Action as a supporting member or a contributor. We're building the movement that can win this. This has been your midweek update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.